Have you ever heard of big T trauma and little t trauma? That verbiage is actually kind of new to me. I might have heard of it maybe in the last few years. And I think back to when I was really suffering with depression, and I didn't know all those words. I didn't know what was wrong with me. In fact, I had to have a doctor tell me what was wrong. And the word depression was like the best thing that I could relate to. I didn't know any other words. I've actually got a recording where I coached someone through some trauma healing. So if you're curious what the coaching for trauma healing would look like for you, tune in to this episode. Now, this was recorded over a year ago with my client's permission. Just to give you a little backstory, this is a client one-on-one session for trauma healing. And this particular client I had never met before. I learned through the conversation that her brother was killed in the line of duty when she was actually pretty young. And that tragedy, that trauma, was really affecting her and her whole family, her whole life. Hey warrior, welcome to Heal with God. Do you want to heal from hurt and heartache? Do you find yourself constantly thinking of ways to heal from trauma, anxiety, and depression, only to be met with the fear of failing and feeling hopeless? Hey there, I'm Heather O'Brien. I too was a Christian sitting on the pews every Sunday, but hopelessly living with addictions as well as depression and anxiety for years. I prayed for myself, but I was full of shame, being stuck in cycles I couldn't break free from. My healing and deliverance came from learning how to hear God's voice. Okay, stay with me here. I didn't know that was a thing either. I didn't know the God of the universe, my creator, wanted to personally talk to me, but he did, and he does. Through prayer, God gave me a blueprint of step-by-step instructions to forgive the unforgivable, heal from trauma, and be delivered of limiting beliefs as well as addictions. If you're ready to find healing with God through prayers that actually work, this podcast is for you. Warrior, I pray the spirit of revelation comes upon you now, and may your heart and mind be receptive to hearing God's voice as you tune in. You're tired of feeling like a failure. You're tired of leaving your healing up to medicines that have so many side effects and leave you feeling numb rather than healed. You are sick of feeling afraid, isolated, and hopeless when you know it's God's desire to heal you. You want to heal with God, but you haven't figured out how to practically do that. You want accountability, but you aren't sure where to look for that either. I want to assure you that you are on the right track. God does want to heal you. He sent Jesus to die for your salvation, healing, and deliverance as proof. If you are sick of ineffective prayers and want a biblical framework to heal with God, you are in the right place. You don't have to do this healing journey on your own anymore. Let's walk through the simple 4-step healing with God framework together in a group coaching experience called the Trauma Painkiller Roadmap. And here you'll also have the accountability that you've been aching for. You will learn the exact steps to end the hurts left from trauma in a simple, direct route with tools to implement immediate relief that lasts. Can I save you a spot? Check out the details now at heatherobrien.net/courses. That's heatherobrien.net/courses. The link is in the show notes. Hey friend, this is episode 108, and I'm going to begin this episode by sharing a review from a listener. They say trauma can be very damaging. Heather helps guide us to forgiveness, overcoming obstacles, and staying free. This is from Ren to Pinky. They say this is a great show. Thank you so much for taking the time to share this encouragement by giving me a written review on Apple Podcasts. I sure do look forward to reading each and every one of them. And listener, I would really love if you would pause this episode right now and just take the moment to go on Apple Podcasts and write a written review. So what I'm doing is I'm going to give you a clip, just a very short clip of Savannah's response in the trauma coaching. My first question to her is really important. It's the thing that you need to listen to for yourself and ask yourself, what is your answer to this question that I ask her? Okay, so let's listen to this and then we'll talk about it.
Hey there, Savannah. I'm so thankful that you are allowing me to record this. I'm Savannah, and yes, I'm okay with this being recorded. Thank you so much. What happened to you wasn't right. It wasn't right that your brother was murdered. That's not right. It wasn't right that you were so young when this happened to you. It wasn't right that you had to go through so many traumatic things at such a young age. So this is kind of how I like to pose the question to see where we're at. How easy is it for you to forgive someone? Honestly, I know this sounds so terrible to say, but it kind of depends on the situation, I think, for me.
Okay.
I feel like that my major issue with forgiveness is I just want somebody to be upfront with me. just be very honest and upfront, no matter if it's going to hurt my feelings in the moment or not. I'd rather you just tell me. But when they don't do that, even if it's just the smallest things, I feel like I withdraw immediately from that person, and I don't feel like that I can forgive them for things.
Okay, warrior. You heard her response. You heard my question. How easy is it for you to forgive someone? So that's a question I ask people whenever they call me and set up a one on one session for trauma healing, because it's really the very beginning of healing. It's okay to be where you are, but it's not okay to stay where you are. In order for healing to come, you have to be willing to let go of some of that hurt, to let the hurt, the trauma, the memories, the pain not define you. And so at the beginning of this episode, I was asking, have you ever heard about big T traumas and little T traumas? And I really did suffer with depression, but it was rooted in a trauma that happened to me, similar to any one of you, I'm sure. What happened to you wasn't right and it's not okay. But how we respond to it is ultimately our choice. And how we respond to it brings back our power in the situation. So a big T trauma is something that generally it's just a bigger event, if you will. It's something more catastrophic, life altering. But little T traumas, they can be just as catastrophic. Let me give you an example here. Savannah here actually experienced what I would call a big T trauma because her brother was murdered and she was very young when this happened. So it was a life altering thing. I mean, it changed her whole family dynamic, everything. Now, for me, I think about the little T traumas that have happened in my life from one moment in someone speaking something to me, hurting my feelings. I have looked back through my healing journey and I have seen where it has taken me a solid year of trauma healing to recover from that one interaction with that person. And we would classify that as a small T trauma. And my point here is whether you've experienced something large and wildly impactful to something small like someone hurt your feelings, it's still valid. The trauma happened, and what happened to you probably wasn't right. And we live in this world full of sin that we live in a world where the devil has the capacity to influence those people closest to us, our friendships, our relationships, and infiltrate all kind of spirits of fear, rejection. And when we need healing, when we need to go to Jesus and we need healing, it can look like there's, I like to imagine like an onion. There's like layer after layer after layer of healing that needs to happen. But the first layer, maybe the very first layer, is understanding that God is healer. He wants to heal you, friend. He wants you to live a life of abundance, a contentment, of love that you can give and receive. He wants that for you. He says in John 10:10, the thief has come to steal, kill, and destroy. But I came that you would have life and life abundantly. And so we know that that's Jesus's goal for us, is abundant life. But we also know the goal of the enemy is to steal, kill, and destroy us. So I want you to think about your situation. Are you living the abundant life that Jesus died for you to have? Or are you walking around with effects from trauma that you don't know how to heal? That was my story. That was Savannah's story for years. And you can hear the rest of the coaching session and all of the things that I walked through her back on episode number 25. You can eavesdrop on the whole client conversation of me walking her through forgiveness. But today, what I want to talk about is just in general trauma healing. Everyone needs it. Everyone needs it because everyone has had their feelings hurt or something happened to them that wasn't fun to live through. And the first step, go back to this question I asked her, is how easy is it for you to forgive someone? I think we really have to wrestle with this question. And I don't want you to just give me an answer that just sounds religious and right. I want you to hear what your heart is saying. How easy is it for you to forgive someone when they hurt your feelings? Because that's step one in trauma healing, but it's not all of trauma healing by any stretch of the imagination, because there's onion layers that happen. We have to deal with how we feel. We have to deal with how other people feel about us. We have to deal with the spirits that try to infect us through the process of healing. We have to deal with the fact that people don't like us. And then there's all these fear of man that comes up and all these identity issues that come up. We have to deal with each and every layer. And I just want to ask you, friend, are you dealing with them? Are you dealing with any of these layers? Just pick one. Pick one. And I challenge you today to actually stick with it. Stick with one onion layer of your healing. If it's this question, how easy is it for you to forgive someone? You could binge this podcast, Heal with God, and episode after episode, I talk about forgiveness, how to do it, what it is, what it's not. But I challenge you today to pick something that you can deal with God, and you can really get one onion layer healed up. At the beginning of this episode, I mentioned you don't have to do this healing journey alone. If you're tired of leaving your healing up to medicines that have so many side effects and leave you feeling numb rather than healed, if you're sick of feeling afraid, isolated, and hopeless, when you know it's God's desire to heal you, let's walk through this simple 4-step healing with God framework together in a group coaching experience called the Trauma Painkiller Roadmap, where you're going to have the accountability that you've been aching for. You're going to learn the exact steps to end the hurts left from trauma in a simple, direct route with tools to implement immediate relief that lasts. Can I save you a spot? Check out all the details now at heatherobrien.net/courses. That's heatherobrien.net/courses. And the link is in the show notes. Well, hey, warrior, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you for taking your time to tune in. Just to be clear, the opinions, services, and/or products mentioned by the host or guest on this podcast do not guarantee the results or outcomes of any kind. You alone are exclusively accountable for the results, consequences, and outcomes for your life. This podcast isn't a substitute for your physician or therapist, but I'm honored you included me on your spiritual growth journey. Would you take a moment right now to pause and share this episode with at least one person you thought of while listening? It might be the very encouragement they need today to know that you were thinking of them. Also, it would mean so much to me if you take a minute to leave me a written review on Apple Podcasts, letting me know how this podcast is encouraging or challenging you. And if you haven't yet, scroll down to the show notes below and sign up for the weekly Heal with God Insider email, as well as the community Facebook group. I'm looking forward to connecting with you again next Monday, warrior. Until then, I pray blessings and favor will chase you down.